And in those moments, though, of euphoria, of joy, of excitement, you're much more likely to think it's possible, right? You're much more likely to take that idea and run with it. But then we get home and the insecurity creeps in and the overwhelmment of, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. Where would I start? I don't even no, not happening. God kind of almost like yelling at me. That's why I always say, listen to the whisper, because the whisper starts nicely and quietly, and it gets louder and louder and louder until for me, it becomes a burden, a monkey on my back. This is the year 2022. I am going to do the freaking podcast. Finally, I had all the pieces in place and I was paralyzed. I was absolutely paralyzed. Welcome back to the Low Bottom High Rise podcast with me, Moira Casaba, your host. And this is a totally different episode, something that isn't necessarily even an episode, but something that I want to ask and tell you. And I'm going to start by saying that I just found out that the Low Bottom High Rise podcast is ranked in the top 1.5% in the world. Guys, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for listening. I can't thank you enough for your support. I can't thank you enough for sharing the episodes. For if you haven't given us a review on Apple Podcasts, please do. Because it's in large part to just your word of mouth. I haven't done a ton of promotion of the podcast. And I also want to share this quick little story as I'm giving thanks to you guys. And I say this in hopes to encourage you in your own journey of whatever your dreams are, whatever you feel. What I always say, that whisper is just calling you to in your life, because I have always felt that, well, I haven't always felt. There was a time where I was like, no, I have no desire to do a podcast. That doesn't sound fun. That doesn't sound like something I'd want to do. Probably fear speaking back then, right? Too daunting, too intimidating. I don't know how to do that. But there came a time where there were moments in my life where I experienced what we all know when you're in that like joyous place, that euphoric place where maybe you're driving your car and the music's on and you're just like bursting at the seams with just this insane emotion. And it was in those moments where I could be thinking about something completely outside the landscape of my business that I would hear that whisper. Because I believe that when we're connected at that frequency, when we're connected on that plane, is when we are connected to source, to God at the closest, right? And so I would have these random, which seemed like crazy out of nowhere thoughts come to me. You should do a podcast. And I'm like, what? And in those moments, though, of euphoria, of joy, of excitement, you're much more likely to think it's possible, right? You're much more likely to take that idea and run with it. But then we get home and the insecurity creeps in, and the doubt and the fear and the unbelief and the imposter syndrome and the overwhelmment of, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. Where would I start? I don't even no, not happening. That went on for me for almost 2.5 years, where I would have those moments that would, it's kind of like contractions. They would grow in frequency and intensity, right? And clarity, that I knew that this was what I was supposed to do, that this is what I was being called to do. And it's almost the clearer that message got and the louder that message got, the more fear and insecurity grew, right? Because it was like I was being pulled so close to it that it was just terrifying in a way in moments. And so I just kept, I would say, yes, this is the year. I'm going to do it. This is the plan, strategic business plan. I'm starting the podcast in 2021. And then 2021 would come and go. And I would have some excuse as to why it didn't fit. It wasn't right. It wasn't good timing. I had other projects. I had other goals. And I would just put it on the back burner. And the same thing would happen again with increased frequency and intensity, till I got to the point where it was, God kind of almost like yelling at me. That's why I always say, listen to the whisper, because the whisper starts nicely and quietly. And it gets louder and louder and louder until for me, it becomes a burden, a monkey on my back. And in the beginning of, and I guess that whole journey started actually maybe 2019, because it was 2020, the end of 2021, that I, always do this deep dive into my goals and what I want to create and what I want to do and how I want to show up. And, I get really clear on nothing, almost nothing in life lights me up more than connection. That is like my love language: connection, conversation, like diving deep into topics that matter. Nothing makes me happier. And so I knew that, and I thought that's what the podcast would be, but fear, but insecurity, but unbelief. And I knew that if I put it off one more year, I just knew that I needed to make a decision, that I was either going to do it or I was going to, table it forever, because I couldn't live with this burden on my shoulders, on my heart. And it's, pardon my language, but it's the expression, you got to, shit or get off the pot. And that was the moment. There's really no other way to put that into words. That's what I was feeling. And so I made the conscious decision. I was like, this is the year 2022. I am going to do the freaking podcast finally. And so somehow, I took the action steps. I got the mic. I, connected with the editor or something like that. And I had all the pieces in place, and I was paralyzed. I was absolutely paralyzed. And guys, I want you to see the connection between just a year and a few months ago of being paralyzed in fear to take action on a calling, and now being in the top 1.5% of podcasts worldwide. That's the whisper. It's leading you to greatness. And so what did I do? Well, I called my best friend, who can be a bully at sometimes in the best of ways. And this is who you need to have on your team. I was just at a conference, and he gave a list of like the 5 people you need on your team, kind of in your corner. And I was like, I know who fits that mold. And I can't remember what he called them. The bruiser, maybe. I think that's what he called it. He did, the bruiser. You need a bruiser. That's one of the 5 people. And so I called my friend, the bruiser, who doesn't beat me up and give me a hard time. And there's nothing negative, but she is going to bully me into what she knows is best for me. And she is not going to let me off the hook. And we talk almost every day. One of my best friends, Erin. But this day I called her, and she's like, hey, what's up? And I said, well, there's this thing that I need to do, and I'm terrified and paralyzed. And so I'm calling you. And she knew right in that moment. She didn't know what it was, but she knew it was game on. It was time for her to step into that role for me, not our everyday chatter. And she was like, oh, I am here for this. What is it? Let's go. And I was like, it was probably 10 o'clock in the morning. And she said, listen to me. You are going to get off this phone. You are going to hop on that microphone. I don't care if you know if you're supposed to wear headphones or not wear headphones, or where the jack goes, or what the audio is doing, or whatever. You're going to click record, and you're just going to speak. You're going to speak like you always speak. And, she built up my confidence. She's like, Moira, you just deliver. You've never not delivered. Like, this is intended for you. This is so stupid that you're not doing this, that kind of build up. But she held me to it. She said, 2:00 today. 2:00 today. Episode 1 done. Just do it. Just do it. And I was like, oh crap. I knew who to call in that moment. And so what did I do? I recorded my first episode, nervous as all get out, falling over my words. Probably. I truly didn't know. I was like, why do I wear headphones? There's a mic in front of me. I don't even understand what's happening. I still don't really fully understand. I know I can hear a lot better in here. I know that every time I call my podcast editor and I say, do I really have to wear the headphones? She's like, Moira, yes, if you want the audio to be good, wear the freaking headphones. I'm like, okay. And now top 1.5% in the world. Crazy. So I share that story with you to help you take action, because everything you want, your greatness, is on the other side of fear. And get yourself a bruiser, get yourself an Aaron. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. The second thing, the ask kind of that I want to share, and this again is like somebody saying I should do this, people asking me to do this. And I'm like, but this is scary because it's a lot more work. It's a whole lot more work. But everyone's been asking. So drum roll, we are going to start dropping 2 episodes a week. 2 episodes a week, which means that for my listeners who love to hear from my special guests, who are like the most insane humans on the planet, that I can't believe I get to sit down and have a conversation with, you're going to be able to hear from them once a week. Every single Monday, we're dropping a guest episode every single Monday, not every other Monday, every single Monday. And then what I'm going to do is come in with a solo episode every Thursday. It's going to be short and sweet. It's going to be, drive time. If you've got 15 minutes after you drop the kids off from school, you can plug in, listen to that short little episode, get a little daily dose of Moira. My friends always say the Moira magic. I don't know about that, but maybe you'll get some Moira magic, and just short and sweet episodes. But here's the ask. What I was feeling called to do as I explored this idea with a lot of fear, I was like, what I really want to do in those episodes is answer questions. Nothing like makes me feel more at home than when I can just sit and have a conversation, when I can just sit and answer the real questions that people have for me. A few years ago, I was asked to speak at a big event in Scottsdale, Arizona, and it was a position it was a season where I really didn't have the bandwidth to do it. And, a big keynote presentation takes a lot of prep, like 1,000,000 hours. And I said, I would love nothing more than to pour into and serve the people there. But I have one favor. They were like, yeah, what? Name it. And I was like, is it possible to just walk out on stage and do a Q&A? Because I'm also that much more connected to my authenticity when it's live and it's real time and you can feel the energy and take the questions and just answer them instead of having something so prepared and a slideshow presentation and all the things. And so that's what I want to do, guys. I get question after question after question in my DMs and in email. And I just want to answer them for you and answer them for everybody. So here's the ask. I'll put it in the show notes. You can either send me an email or just send me a DM on Instagram, either way. And I'll answer your questions, whatever they may be. Guys, if they're insane and crazy, I might not answer them and they might not be aired. So ask away, right? Just ask. And that's another tip from a successful person. All you can do is ask, right? Ask the questions. And then also think about just topics, right? Maybe there's not a specific question, but maybe it's, can you talk about intermittent fasting? I think I did an episode on intermittent fasting. I can't recall. I feel like I did, but I've been an intermittent faster for 10 years. People ask me those questions all the time. Like, can you talk about and tell us more about how you intermittent fast? Can you talk more about your fitness regimen, your nutrition regimen, whatever it is, your morning process. I mean, that's kind of the age old question. But anything, right? You can ask me about my marriage. You can ask me about my parenting. You can ask me how I prepare for a speech, anything. That's what those episodes are going to be about. And then last but not least, the other thing that I'm going to be doing, just so you're on the lookout for it, is I'm going to do kind of series, like a series where I might be sharing my favorite question, which is, how is this a gift? How is this a gift? Because that question fundamentally changes my life on a daily basis. And the other thing, which I've already mentioned, is listen to the whisper. So I want to hear your stories, and maybe I'll share your story. And if I share your story, I will definitely be sharing it on Instagram and tagging you and all the things, but I will also be sending you a little gift, because there is so much power in your stories, guys. And you might not be called to sit behind a mic and start a podcast, but your story has power. Your story has hope. And so I'm going to be sharing this on my social, but those two things, and we're going to put a series together around your stories. Listen to the whisper. When is a time in your life that you listen to the whisper? And what's the story there that played out? And then the second one is, when did you ask in your life, how is this a gift? And asking yourself that question changed everything, right? So email, DM, you can just put the first few words, how is this a gift? Listen to the whisper, and then tell me your story. Tell me your story, because I have this platform now and it's not about me, and I have amazing guests, but there's so much power in your story. So that's it from me. Thanks again for tuning in. I am super excited about this season coming up, and just all the goodness and all the episodes and all the ideas that I feel like are definitely God-given. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week.